Hey, welcome to Leaders with Leverage. I am super excited about this episode because I am joined today by a very close, dear family friend who is from the UK and is an amazing leader and executive and is in a really interesting business. And funny enough, he is currently in the US at my house, but we thought it would be best to look side by side so it wouldn't be like everybody had to see our side faces. So, welcome, Kev.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to Leaders with Leverage.
Thank you, Susie.
Should I call you Kevin just to be official here?
No, Kev's fine.
Kev's fine. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Kev's fine.
So, you're an auctioneer, and it's all around estates and real estate. Tell me what that means, first of all. Help us understand what you do for a living.
Okay. Well, first of all, uh, we are invited to go and look at properties on behalf of clients. And the word in England, certainly the UK, the property encompasses residential properties, whether they are houses, flats, condos, as you would say in the US. They can be cottages, country cottages with roses around the door. Classic country cottage. They can be commercial properties, both vacant and let and subject to a tenancy, and they can be land anywhere from a few square meters or square feet, as it is in the US, to several acres. So that's pretty much the variety that I get involved in. So every day is different, and every client's different. It can be a corporate client, it can be a private individual, and it's a collective property or real estate auction that we hold about eight times a year. And we generally have anywhere between 100 and 200 lots to offer on each auction.
So, is
That's
that
it in a nutshell, really.
Yeah. So is that like instead of we have real estate agents, and so is this how everybody purchases their homes?
No, I mean, the vast majority of property will be sold through the realtor that you have in the US. We call them estate agents, but there are
Okay.
certain properties which will go to auction, sometimes because of who the seller is.
Okay.
Um, because where we deal with a lot of property that is corporate, they need to show that it's an arm's length transaction. And similarly, if we're dealing with a deceased estate, there may be a single property to multiple properties that, again, they need to show a completely arm's length transaction. And so that they are seen to be obtaining the best possible price. And it's that phrase, best possible price, which is why so many properties go to auction.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait because we are going to talk a lot about negotiation as well and how
Oh,
that
yes.
fits in.
Yeah.
But so tell me, how did you get into this? Like, tell me kind of your journey. What did you study, and how do you look at leadership? Kind of give me, your view of the world, if you will.
Well, for your viewers, Susie and I have never really spoken about this. So
Yes, this is all
Susie is
new.
about to learn how I got involved in auctions.
That's right.
Um, my my first involvement in auctions was that my father was an antique dealer. So I did go to auctions with my dad, and he bought various bits and pieces. And then I applied for what we call in England, what we can no longer call them, but it was an office junior back in the early 1980s, and it was with a firm of general auctioneers. And we, at the time, we sold absolutely anything and everything, from real estate to commercial vehicles to hay and straw to livestock. And I was caught one day pretending to auction some furniture. And one of the senior auctioneers walked in from the main hall into the small hall, saw me get off the rostrum, having heard everything that I'd said, and said, "Kevin, my office now."
Oh no.
I'd been there 6 months, and I thought to myself, "Oops, I've really blown it." And I got into his office, sat down with him, and he was a lovely man. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us,
Mhm.
but his name was Les Wade, and I have a lot to thank him for. because we used to have a rota at that place, and Les said to me, "Well, you're clerking with me." And so that the viewers understand, clerking was the person who stood or sat beside the auctioneer, writing down all the information.
Yep.
And Les said to me, "Right, you're clerking with me on the furniture auction, 1 till 2. We're going to have role reversal."
Wow.
And this was on the Tuesday. So on the Wednesday, having not slept a wink the night before, I stood up on the rostrum for the first time with one of the senior auctioneers, Les, on my side, and he said, "I won't let you sink. If you swim, absolutely fine, but if you sink, I won't let you sink too far." And when I'd had the hour or hour and a half long auctioneering session, Les and I got off the rostrum, and he said to me, "You really enjoyed that, didn't you?" I said, "I know what I'm going to do with my career." And from then on, I was there for 14 years, and I progressed up the ladder. And I was conducting auctions every single day of the week. And they literally ranged from Monday would be cars and commercials, Tuesday would be livestock, from pigs, cattle, sheep. Wednesdays could be anything from hand straw, milk quota, again cars and commercials, 4x4s, and then Thursdays could be horses, tack and saddlery, to antiques and fine art, to household furniture, livestock again, and then Friday could be anything from contractors' plant, farm machinery. So it was very varied. And somebody a few years ago said to me, I was in Australia, and I met an auctioneer in Australia, and he said to me, "So, Kev, tell me what you have sold." And I sort of looked at him square in the face, and he said, "Well, have you sold this and have you sold that?" And I said, "It would be easier for me to tell you what I haven't sold." And he laughed, and we got on like a house on fire. And so I was there for 14 years with that firm of general auctioneers. And then I got approached by a firm of real estate agents with their auctioneering arm to be their number 2 auctioneer. So after much consideration, I joined them, and I was there for about 10 years. And then it's probably nearly 20 years ago, I joined the current firm, and was invited onto the board of directors
Nice.
after about 18 months. So yeah,
Wow.
so that's the sort of very rough and very fast sort of progression that I've had through my auctioneering career. And the one thing I will say is that I still, even after 40 odd years of doing this job, I still absolutely love auctioneering and love going out to see people, because there is nothing better than it. It's really great fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's so amazing. So much there. I want to go back to that person. What'd you say his name was?
Les
That
Wade.
Les Wait. I just love that, so often as leaders, we know that the impact that we can have, or advocating for somebody, and that's
Yep.
what I would call a sponsor, like somebody that sees somebody that has great talent and gives them this opportunity, and kind of selflessly
Yeah.
allows that to happen. And so the fact that he allowed you to do that and put you in a place of discomfort, but an opportunity to really shine, I think
It was
it's
it
such a
was
great
an
opportunity.
Yeah, it was an opportunity that even to this day I will never forget. I'll never
Yeah.
forget him for his generosity to give up his stint on the rostrum to
Yeah.
allow a very, very rookie, 16-year-old to actually take the rostrum. And I'll never forget
Yeah.
him. And the one other person in my working career was a man that I worked with in my second auctioneering job, and his name was David Harvey. And the very first day that I met him, having starting a new job, he said to me, "Right, I am not your boss, I am your colleague. And whenever
Nice.
I introduce you to anybody, I will not be introducing you as my assistant auctioneer. I will be introducing you as my colleague and my co-auctioneer,
Yeah.
Kevin." And those two people, I think, have influenced me probably more than I realise.
Yeah.
But they were two absolutely selfless people, and
Yeah.
so from those two people, I've tried to do the same with the younger members of our team by giving them the opportunity to sort of go out and look at properties themselves. But I'm always there in the background, giving hopefully some advice that they'll take away and learn from. But
Yeah. So,
yeah,
how do you get in that mindset, or how do you be proactive about that? Because I think that's such a great tip as leaders,
yeah,
and we don't realize where our influence will take a life on its own. Like they don't even know the impact that they've had on you, and so we have to have this belief in that. But I think it's really important for people to understand, how do you get more proactive as leaders, because we're responsible to make sure that we are giving people, and they might not even know what it is,
no,
like that opportunity and seizing that. So how do you do that?
yeah. It was a comment actually that my colleague David Harvey, nearly 30 years ago, said to me. He said, I'm in my 60s and you're in your 30s. You are the next me. And I think that what that taught me was the fact that, as much as I love my job and I have no intention, of giving up anytime soon, but you always have to look to the future. And the only way that you can look to the future to make sure that there is a good succession is to actually help those younger members of the team sort of come through. Let them make the mistakes, because they need to make the mistakes in order to learn from them.
Yeah.
But before they go and push the button, if you like, you can advise them that, what about looking at this angle? And, have you thought about what would happen if this happened? And so you're sort of not teaching them, or not sort of taking over their role, but more as an advisory, in an advisory capacity. It is difficult, I think, to have the confidence in other people, particularly when you've been doing a particular job for such a long time and you know it inside out. But as they say in England, I don't know whether you have the same phrase here. Every day is a school day,
Mm.
and I think that's what makes my job so interesting, is because every day is different, and you meet different people. You can meet a farmer one day who might give you the impression that he's the poorest farmer in the world because he's got holes in his trousers, which you call pants, and a bit of baler twine, wrapped around his waist for his belt. But actually, he might be very, very, very wealthy, but he still appreciates honesty. And I think it's the
Yeah.
honesty that will prevail, because I think a liar will always be found out.
Hmm.
An honest person can't be found out because they're telling the truth. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah. And that builds trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what really, people need to trust their leaders so that they know that they have their best interests in mind. And that's really important to keep
Yeah.
our eye on that.
And I think it goes for both the people that you're working with and also the people that you're acting for. So in England, we call them the vendors or the sellers.
Yep.
Um, but it's equally as important
Yeah.
for the buyers or the purchasers to trust you. And
Yeah.
there are many buyers in England, in our auction world, that if they pick the phone up and talk to me or one of my colleagues, and we give them, what we think, that 99 times out of 100, they believe what we are saying because they
Hmm.
trust us.
Yeah.
And, having been in the industry for a long time, I'm in a very, very fortunate position that some of my clients I've acted for 30, 35 years, and there is a huge amount of trust. So
Hmm.
they will send me keys to an empty property at my home address. I will go out and look at it. I will say to them, I think it should be this, but perhaps guide at this and reserve at that. And very few cases will they come back and say, oh, actually, we want a bit more, because they have total trust in what you are telling them, that what you're telling them is the truth, and the truth
Hmm.
will always out.
Yeah. It's so good. As you know, I wrote a book
Yeah,
on the art of negotiation. And so like the whole idea that negotiation is around us all the time. But usually when people are buying something like this, it's a high ticket, this is a high stakes for people. And
it is.
people feel that manipulation or I'm going to be taken advantage of. And so how do you look at negotiation? You are doing a job that is very much would be in the category of I need to be a good negotiator. So how do
Yeah.
you look at it or maybe talk about a story around an interesting negotiation that would apply to the manipulation in everyday kind of context?
Um, that's an interesting question and a good question at that. Um, I think I think subconsciously what I tend to do is whenever I go out and look at a property or a piece of land or any kind of real estate, I put myself in the seller's shoes. And if I was the
Yeah.
seller,
Yeah.
what would I do? Would I go to auction, or would I go to an estate agent, a real estate or realtor? Um, and then hopefully, when you get the instruction, you then jump over the fence and then become the potential buyer. And you're then sort of looking for uh, what is the potential buyer looking for. And I think sometimes the seller and the buyer are looking for different things. But what you've got to try and do is make sure that there's information from both sides so that you have both a happy seller and a happy buyer.
Hmm.
Um, uh, yeah, I think that's what I probably do subconsciously.
Yeah.
And if you're always trying to help people, and one of my mottos actually, and the office laugh when I say this, but one of my mottos to both sellers and buyers is if you know the answer to a question, don't ask the question. But if you don't know the answer to the question, it's never a silly question. It's
Mm.
only when you know the answer to the question that's when it becomes a silly question. And sometimes people try and catch you out, you know, because we all like a bit of a joke every now and again. Although it is a serious job, and as you say, Susie, it's high stakes. It's a lot of capital money.
Hmm.
It's proportionately it's much more expensive in the UK than it is in the States. You have a lot more land. And funny enough, we were talking about the prices with your daughter and son-in-law. We were talking about prices in both Colorado, Denver, Boulder, and up in Estes Park. And actually, what you get for your money in the States is significantly more than you would in the UK.
Wow. It's hard for
So,
us to believe that because it
well,
just feels like it's so high price here.
well, yeah, it's. Um, I'll give you an example. A two-bedroom terraced house that would be maybe 130 square meters in total would probably, particularly in Kent, would probably set you back the best part of £300,000 UK pounds. I think for
Wow.
300,000, you would probably get quite a bit more, particularly the further out you go from
Yeah.
perhaps Denver City.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, everything is proportionate. I mean, we're a small island. We got lots of people. Lots of
Yeah.
people means competition.
Yeah.
Competition means the prices go up.
Yeah.
Um,
So you have a lot of confidence about what you do and you have a lot of passion around it. Where did that come from? Have you always just felt really steadfast and I'm really good at what I do? Or we talk a lot about imposter syndrome. Is that something that is something you experience?
I don't think I've always been confident. I think when I was in my teens and early 20s, believe it or not, I was actually really quite shy. I you almost when you stand up in front of an audience, you almost put on a character. You become an actor effectively because it is theatre. And the way that you relax the audience is to have a few jokes, and they're the same ones that just get really sort of round and round and round. but it's something that I don't think you can. I think it's something that you can't learn. I think it's something that you are inherently natural at it, or not. And I know many auctioneers that absolutely hate it. Standing up in front of somebody. But for me, I'm a traditional auctioneer. I love standing up in front of people, but I can do that. I still get butterflies the night before. Don't get me wrong, but standing up in front of people when I've been best man at a wedding, that is absolutely daunting. Why? Because probably 75% of the
Yeah.
people that are in the room, and it can be 200 people, but standing up in front of them, you rehearse, 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 rehearse again, and then when you think you've rehearsed enough, you rehearse 10 times more. With auctioneering, real estate, it has to come more naturally, because I think if you don't have the natural ability to stand up in front of 1,500 people, 2,000 people, and conduct yourself, you're sort of on the back foot, really. But yeah, it's I still get the nerves. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
After umpteen years of doing it, and I think what the nerves do is they keep you alert,
Yeah.
and that's what you need in the sort of auctioneering world. If you are not alert, you may miss a bid, and that bid is costly for the client.
Yeah, for
And then you
sure.
get a very disgruntled underbidder, perhaps,
Yeah.
who says, "I was bidding." But it's
Yeah.
actually there. Interesting enough, in the UK, it's actually the responsibility of the buyer to make sure that the auctioneer has seen their bid, not the other way around. So yeah, it's an
Oh,
interesting world.
very interesting. Tell us about how many people show up to it. Like how does it feel? Is it televised? How
Oh,
tell us a
okay.
little bit more about what it's like for what you do, and tell us a little bit about how do you know when you see people when they're ready to buy, or what is kind of going on in your head to be able everything happens so fast. Tell
It
us a little
does.
bit about that.
There's pre that horrible pandemic that we all,
Yeah.
are very pleased to have the majority of it behind us. We would have in-room auctions where we would have maybe 1,500, 2,000 people in an auditorium or a room, and uh, we would offer each property, each lot in numerical order. Um, it's if you are close enough to a bidder, you can normally tell through years of experience, but you can normally tell when people are getting ready to bid, because their eyes actually become wider. They tend to sit up in the chair, and they tend to get something ready to wave at you. Um, since the pandemic, we were halfway through our program of auctions in March 2020, and we had to switch to online auctions. Um, for me, you know, we had to do it. We didn't have a choice, and uh, we had a system in place for about 8 years prior to that, where it was completely online. So we were able from the Wednesday, I think it was the Wednesday the 20th of March, we were halfway through the auction, and we had to switch the remainder of the auction to online, which we did the following week. And we gave people the choice and said, look, we can't hold the in-room auction because the government are preventing us from doing that because of that horrible word. And a lot of people chose not to offer their properties via the
Hmm.
online system. We then offered those properties that the people agreed that we would be able to do so. And without fail, those people that decided not to offer the properties online rang up and said, "We wish we had, we'd allowed you to offer it online," because it then set the tone for what we now do, which is completely online.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said earlier, I'm a traditional auctioneer. I love standing up in front of people, but my job is to get the most money I can for the client.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic in terms of number of people that are in the sort of auction room, whether it's in room or virtual. We went from maybe 1,200, 1,500, maybe 2,000 people pre-pandemic to something like 40,000 people
Wow.
post-pandemic. So a lot of people say to me, are you going to go back to in-room auction? And when you say to them the statistics,
Yeah.
they say, well, in fairness to the system, there's no comparison.
Hmm.
So we have people from all over the world, including the States. There are people that buy UK property from the States, and the the UK property market is seen very differently, I think, because people see it not necessarily as a home, but they see it as a way to make money in the
Hmm.
medium to long term. So, yeah, it's as an auctioneer, a traditional auctioneer, I'd love to go back to the in-room auction, but in reality, my job is to get the most money with the widest possible audience, and that at the moment is online.
Yeah. And how do they signal? Do they use how do you signal virtually that you're
Um,
interested?
Anybody that's interested in bidding on a lot, they have to register with the online platform system, and they literally are given a random letter to signify that that's who they are, and then they press the return button if they want to bid at the price. There's a facility on there where they can manually increase the bid more than the increment that's there, but generally speaking, it works very, very well. And I think now that people have become used to it, it's been running for, well, over 3 years now. Now that they've become used to it, I was actually talking to um, a purchaser uh, last summer, so last UK summer, and he was sitting on a beach in Spain with his
Wow.
feet in the sea and a laptop on his knees,
Yeah.
and he said to me, "Why would I want to come back to the UK
Yeah.
into the cold and dreary country that the weather can be?" He said, "I can sit in Spain," he said, "and I can bid, and I'm just as successful online as I would be in the room." He said, "So for me," he said, "no," he said, "I'm happy to continue bidding online." So, there'll always be people that prefer the in-room auction,
Yeah.
but I think that's where the social element, sort of outweighs the sort of in room. That the social element in room is better than the social element online because everybody is working remotely effectively.
Yeah. 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 So one question I like to ask everybody is your relationship with leverage, because I really believe leverage is a positive thing. And when you think about it with leaders, but before I want to take away some opportunities for you, because you also keyed in on something that is just a standard practice that you said it comes automatically to you, and it's looking at the interests of the other party and
Yeah,
always considering that, and I went to Harvard and they said, if you just take 30 seconds to put yourself in the chair of the other person, and whether it's a difficult conversation with somebody or it's, just you need to come to some conclusion with somebody, considering their interests, putting yourself in their head is like the number one thing you can do. So I'm taking that totally
yeah.
off the table for you because you already gave us that brilliant piece of advice. But when you look at leverage as a leader and think about leverage in a positive way, how do you define that, or and how have you used leverage in your career?
Oh, um, I think one of the strongest abilities is having the confidence in yourself to say no to something if you don't believe that it's the right decision. And if you're talking about your career path, if you don't believe that it's the right thing for you to do at the time, say no. um, don't look back. Don't look back, because whatever decision you make, whether it's no, yes, maybe, whatever decision you make with the knowledge that you are making at that time. And don't ever look back and say, "Oh, I wish I'd done such and such." If you say no to a job, for example, and you don't get, that job then falls to one side, and the next job you get you don't like. I am a very strong believer in that decision that you made with the ability and the knowledge that you had at the time. And hindsight's just it's just a horrible word. Um, Always look forward, and I'm a strong
Yeah.
believer in whatever decision you make with the best intentions, um, and you make knowing that whatever comes next, it's meant to be.
Yeah.
Um, and I think sometimes if you make a wrong decision, you learn from it, and I think you learn more. I think you learn quicker from making a wrong decision than you do making a right decision.
Yeah.
And how many times do you hear the saying, um, oh, I wish I'd done something else. I wish I'd gone down that path. Well, that path might have led to something even more
Yeah.
dramatic than the path you're on at the moment.
Yeah.
But I would say, whenever you're going for a job interview, um, research the company behind, the job, and whatever question you're asked, listen. And I think
Mm.
listen is such a key word
Yeah.
in business, because if you don't listen, you're never gonna actually give the right answer, or the correct answer, or the answer that you believe in. So I think in whatever business you get involved in, you have to listen to the question and give a precise answer back. Um, so I, every person will have a different idea as to what they want to do, where they want to go in life. And for me, coming off that rostrum at the age of 16, I knew then, at that split second, where I wanted to go. I didn't realize that I was going to end up in sort of real estate, because I started my professional qualifications in a general practice. And about a third of the way through, which was a 7-year course, about a third of the way through, I realized that I loved architecture, I loved property, I loved buildings, I loved design. And I switched from general to real estate. And I was lucky enough to be offered a position within auctioneering and real estate, two of my passions. And from there, it just snowballed onwards. And I've been extremely fortunate, some might say, but I have worked hard. Um, when my youngest was growing up, I sacrificed, not being a dad, but I sacrificed being there full time as a dad, for my studies. And it has led to a better life, and it's meant that I've been able to help both of my children. Um, but you always have to make sacrifices, and that was mine.
Yeah. Oh, that was great. There was so much there. That was a perfect way to end it. I just want to highlight, don't be afraid of no.
Yeah,
Understand kind of what's important to you. And then listening. Listening is truly an art, and it's something that we always need to practice, but really understanding and out of curiosity. So I love that. The no,
yeah,
and really asking and sitting back and listening. So thank you so much, Kev. This was
pleasure,
just full of abundance in terms of just value and goodness. So thank you so much.
pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. Kev's on LinkedIn, and you can reach out to, I'm just going to let them reach out because just the viewers all across the world will want to know you now. So Kevin Gilbert is on LinkedIn. And I appreciate you. Feel free to share this with somebody else if this was something that was interesting to you. And we're really appreciative of you being here. So this is Leaders with Leverage. Our guest was Kevin Gilbert. And until next time, thank you.